And now, it's time for Mr. Sweet's final Pearls of Wisdom by Mr. Sweet.
Hi, 5F. Coming to you here from Mr. Sweet's headquarters, where today I want to leave you with some last words, some pearls of wisdom. I'm not one to really become preachy, and yet there's a couple things I want to leave you with this year to think about as you make your way into summer and on to 6th grade. When I taught at the Geneva School, before I was at Lake Highland, one of their traditions was that on the last day of school, each teacher would get up in a big ceremony in their chapel and deliver a charge to their class. And a charge is kind of like a last word, but it's usually words of encouragement or a challenge. And that's what I want to do today with you guys. And I'm going to record it rather than do it live in case people aren't able to make our Zoom this morning. But I wanted to leave you with a charge. And that comes in the form of two thoughts. My first pearl of wisdom is learn from this. I'm not talking about learning from this video. I'm talking about learning from this coronavirus experience that we're all living through. Back in the first day of social studies class, our lesson was all about why we study history. I asked you to think about that. Why do we study a bunch of dead guys and stories of wars and battles and people killing each other and, stuff like that? Why does that matter? One reason I suggested to you that we study history has to do with the poster that's in our classroom. It's a quote from Michael Crichton that says, "If you don't know history, you don't know anything. You're a leaf that doesn't know it's part of a tree." And I suggested to you that you and I are both parts of an ongoing story, the story of humanity and the story of the United States. And you're part of this bigger story that's unfolding, and learning that story will help you understand your part in it. I also shared the story of cutting a hedge in my yard and how I messed up because I didn't look backwards enough to see where I had been. And that was sort of a metaphor for one of the reasons we study history. But no matter what the reason was that we came up with to why we study history, they all seem to boil down to one thing, and that is learning. Learning from past mistakes, learning from where we've been, learning what part of the story we're a part of. And so I wonder, what can we learn from this coronavirus pandemic that you and I are all living through as an important part of human history? One thing I've learned is that distance learning kind of stinks. I'm thankful for Zoom and all, but Zoom just doesn't cut it when it comes to connecting with you guys and teaching you guys. And hopefully one thing you learn through this is that traditional school ain't that bad. Coming to campus, being with all your teachers face to face, seeing all your friends, doing your work together, enjoying some fun along the way, it seems to be a whole lot better than doing it virtually. Another thing I hope you've learned is that technology is not everything it's cracked up to be. I love tech, but constant Zooms, screencasts, Socratives, quizzes, Google Classroom, all that's great, but it's no substitute for face-to-face human interaction. Hopefully you've learned something like that too, and hopefully that spurs you to action. There's a quote by Einstein that says, "I fear the day technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots." Sometimes we can get so wrapped up in our phones and our iPads and our technology that we're sort of oblivious to the world around us. And I'm as guilty as anybody of that. But hopefully one thing you've learned through this experience is that face-to-face human interaction, there's no substitute for it. And maybe it'll cause you to put your phone down a little bit more, to get together with people face-to-face a little bit more, and to see the forest through the trees. There's that famous quote that says, "You can't see the forest through the trees." Actually, that's a mistake. It really says, "You can't see the forest for the trees." But that's really saying the same thing. And what that quote's talking about is somebody who's looking for a forest and can't see it because they're so close to a tree that all they see is what's in front of them, and they lack the perspective to see the bigger picture. I had a pretty good example of this happen the other day. One of the things I've enjoyed doing during this quarantine is go for bike rides. And I was out bike riding couple of evenings ago, and it was a beautiful night. The sun was going down, and I came to a part in my neighborhood where it had a perfect view of the sunset. The sky was pink and purple. I actually took a picture. And I was sitting there just taking in the majesty of this sunset. And I looked to my left, and there was this family in their house watching Jeopardy. And their faces were turned away from their window in this gorgeous, epic sunset, just watching the TV, sort of sitting there. And I thought, oh, you guys are missing it. If you just turn around, you'll see something that's a whole lot more spectacular than Alex Trebek on Jeopardy. But it was just kind of an interesting example to me of missing out on beauty and special things because they were glued to technology. So I know I'll sound like the old guy here, but a lot of kids I've heard mention over the years that they can't imagine growing up without technology. And I'm beginning to think that I can't imagine growing up with the technology you guys are growing up. You are faced with a whole lot more temptation, a whole lot more need to show self-control, and you're often missing out on some of the best experiences of life because you're glued to your phone. And that's not just kids. Adults are guilty of that too. But that's my first charge to you, is learn from this pandemic. Learn how missing out on being around people at school and being around your teachers and learning kind of how overrated some of technology is. Learn from that. And maybe when things go back to normal, appreciate human interaction more. Put your phone down. Be face-to-face. Be present with people, right? And learn from a time where that was not possible. My second pearl of wisdom is,
try new things.
you know, one of the other silver linings of this pandemic, I think, is that we've been able to get a glimpse of people's personal lives. We've seen in their homes through Zoom, you know, both famous people like Jimmy Fallon and teachers like Mr. Sweet. You've seen my home in a way that you probably never would have without this experience. One room of my house I know you've seen is my garage. It's sort of my favorite room in my house because we've got all kinds of games out there, beanbags, darts, got TV with PlayStation and Wii and all this stuff out there. But it also has my workbench. On my workbench is an item that's of supreme importance to me, and it's one I want to tell you a story about. It looks like this. It's a sign that says D. Lyons, 6 foot 5 inches, 81. This was a sign that hung in the gym of my high school for years and years and years. It was on a track leaderboard of sorts for the school. It was kind of like the Hall of Fame. All the school records that had been set in each event in track and field were posted up publicly for everyone to see. Well, when I was a sophomore or junior in high school, all I wanted to do was play basketball. That was the only sport I was interested in, and I was pretty good at it. Here's a picture of me playing. Oh wait, no, that's not it. This is it. Yeah, that's me in the white. I've shown you pictures of myself playing throughout the years. I'll show you some more right here. But I always looked up at that big sign, and I looked at the records and accomplishments of people that had gone to the school before me. And that one particular sign, D. Lyons, 6'5", 81, caught my eye. See, that was the record holder in the high jump. I think his name was Dave Lyons, and of course he had graduated something like 13 years before I did. I didn't know who he was, but I could tell from the sign that he was the school record holder in that event. Well, after my junior year of basketball, a track coach approached me, and he said, "How would you like to try coming up for the track team? I think you'd be good at the high jump." And I said, "What's the high jump?" I'd not only never done it, I'd never really even heard of it. And he pointed to that sign. He said, "Well, see that guy up there? D. Lyons, 1981. He jumped 6 foot 5 inches, and I think you could beat it." Well, again, I'd never heard of the high jump, let alone never tried it. But I decided, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. And that year, I went out for track. Well, a funny thing happened. It turned out I was really good at the high jump. I won all kinds of meets my junior year, and then as senior year came, I started to look up at that sign in the gym again and wonder, could I beat that? And I got motivated. I started jumping rope, I started lifting weights, I started practicing more, and I kept looking up at that sign as a source of inspiration to tell myself, I'm going to beat that guy. Well, senior year, my hard work paid off. I not only beat his record, but I won the state championship in the event. And when it came time to take that sign down and replace it with my name, my parents did a pretty cool thing, and they contacted the school and they asked if they could have the old sign by Dave Lyons to give to me, almost like a trophy. And then they put up my name, which is one of the proudest moments I think I've ever had. Not only because I set a record, but because I had set my mind to something, I'd worked hard at it, and I'd achieved it. And it was all something that I didn't even know I was good at, and it all happened because I tried something new. Yeah, like 11 years later, some young punk broke my record. Get this, he only jumped 6'6" and a quarter. He beat me by a quarter inch. So they took down that sign, and my parents asked for that, and now that's hanging in my garage too. Something else I decided to just try out recently was woodworking. We moved into a bigger house, had a lot more bedrooms to fill furniture with, and I decided to start making some of it by myself. I didn't know I could do anything like that. I had never tried, but I gave it a shot. I bought a saw and I got to work. I started out by building little tables, and then I started doing some decorative things like this piece for my wife's running medals, and thing to hold our glasses, thing to showcase my son's baseballs. And then I expanded and started building furniture to hold backpacks and shoes, and I built benches and a little thing to go under our TV. I started building headboards for beds, and then even expanded to build some things for school that you'll recognize. And most recently, over quarantine, I built this new little desk for my daughter. So I found out I'm pretty good at it. But again, I never would have even learned that if I hadn't tried. So that's my second charge to you. Try new things. You guys are about to get into 6th grade, where some opportunities are going to open up for you to try all kinds of new things at school. You can join sports clubs, you can do after school activities. There's all kinds of ways for you to experiment and try with new things, and I'd encourage you to do it. Who knows? You might even have a talent for one of them. So there you go. This has been
Pearls of Wisdom by Mr. Sweet.
Well, I told you I wasn't going to get preachy, and then I went and got preachy on the video, so sorry about that. But I love you guys. It's been my pleasure to teach you this year. Can't wait to see you tomorrow at the drive-by, and I hope you have a great summer, and make sure you come back and see me in August.